The night rain came down in sharp, angry needles, turning the parking lot of the small bar in rural Pennsylvania into a blur of reflections. The neon sign flickered like it was fighting to stay alive, and so was I, emotionally at least. My clothes were still damp from running through the storm, my fingertips numb from the cold, my heart heavy from another day that felt like a dead end. I had spent the last hour just sitting in my truck, staring at nothing, wondering how a 30-year-old man like me, Noah Turner, had managed to mess up so many chapters of his own life. But then she stepped out of the bar, trembling, alone, mascara mixed with teardrops, and everything shifted. Her voice cracked as she whispered the words that would change the course of my night, maybe even my future. She said she didn't feel safe walking home and softly asked if I could drive her. I swallowed hard and asked where I was supposed to sleep if I took her. It wasn't flirting. It wasn't a joke. It was the quiet truth of a man without a home, without direction. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us how human we all are, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Her name was Marissa Green, and the glow from the street lamp behind her made her look like someone caught halfway between darkness and light. She clutched her coat tightly around her, shivering as the wind whipped past. I didn't know her. Not really. She had only been a familiar face at the bar, a quiet woman who always sat alone and ordered ginger ale instead of alcohol. She had the kind of sadness in her eyes that told a deeper story, a story most people didn't bother asking about. I wasn't most people. And maybe I only asked because pain recognizes pain. When she told me she didn't feel safe, I didn't need details. Some things are clear without explanation. The way her shoulders caved inward, the way she kept looking over her shoulder, the way her voice carried an exhausted kind of fear. I unlocked the truck and handed her my jacket, and without speaking another word, she climbed in. The drive through the quiet Pennsylvania streets was slow and tense. Rain hit the windows in hard bursts, and every so often I glanced at her to make sure she was okay. She stared ahead, fingers rubbing anxiously against each other, chest rising and falling too quickly. I didn't want to pry, but the silence felt heavy, like it was begging to be broken. So I told her the truth, that I'd been living in my truck for 2 weeks after losing my job at the construction site and my apartment in the same week. Saying it out loud felt humiliating but somehow freeing. She turned toward me, her expression softening in a way I hadn't expected. For a moment, the fear in her eyes faded, replaced by something like understanding. She told me she had left a bad situation behind, one that still tried to follow her in moments like this, and tonight had been one of those moments when the past threatened to catch up. Her apartment was a small, worn-down building tucked behind a row of old maple trees that rattled in the wind. The security lights flickered just like the ones at the bar, and I could tell by the way she hesitated before stepping out of the truck that she didn't want to go in alone. So I walked her up the stairs, my boots squeaking on the wet wood. She unlocked her door with a shaky hand, pushing it open slowly as if scared of what might be inside, but the place was empty and quiet. A single lamp glowed on the kitchen counter, and a half-finished puzzle sat on the table. It was the kind of home built piece by piece through loneliness and effort. When she finally exhaled, her shoulders relaxed just a little, but not fully. I turned to leave because I had nowhere to stay and didn't want to intrude, but she stopped me with a look, one filled with gratitude, guilt, and the helplessness of someone who couldn't bring herself to say goodbye just yet. She told me she couldn't let me sleep in the truck in the freezing rain, not after I helped her. She said it softly, nervously, almost like she expected me to refuse. But refusing kindness when you're starving for it is harder than people think. I stepped inside, and she closed the door behind us, locking it twice. The storm howled outside, but inside, the air tasted warm, fragile, almost hopeful. Her living room smelled faintly of vanilla and old books. A blanket was draped over the couch, and a tiny space heater hummed beside it. She offered me a place to sleep there and apologized repeatedly for not having a guest room. I assured her it was more than enough. When she disappeared into the kitchen to warm up a can of soup, I looked around the small apartment and saw signs of a woman trying her best to rebuild after something painful. There were notes on the refrigerator reminding her to breathe, to eat, to go to therapy. There were framed photos turned face down on the shelf. There was a Bible on the coffee table, open to a page about forgiveness. Every corner of her home whispered a quiet battle she was still fighting. She returned with 2 bowls of soup and sat across from me on the couch. We talked in low tones, sharing pieces of our stories the way people do when it's too late at night and too cold outside to pretend anymore. She told me she moved to Pennsylvania after leaving an unhealthy relationship in Georgia, one where she lost more than she gained. She was building a new life here, New job, new routines, new strength. But some nights the fear still found her, clinging like shadows she couldn't outrun. I told her about losing my job, losing my direction, and feeling like I was losing myself along the way. She listened without judgment, her eyes warm despite the sorrow inside them. As the night deepened, the tension in her posture eased. She laughed once, softly, nervously, as if unsure whether she remembered how. She told me I made her feel safe tonight and that she didn't know how to thank me for that. But the truth was, she had given me something too, a reminder that kindness still mattered, that broken people could still help each other stand. When she finally went to her room, she paused in the hallway and looked back at me with uncertainty, like she wanted to say more, but didn't know how. Then she whispered goodnight and disappeared behind the door. I lay awake for a long time, listening to the storm fade against the windows. The couch was lumpy and the blanket thin, but it felt safer than my truck, warmer than anything I'd felt in weeks. I realized how long it had been since someone trusted me enough to let me into their home, their space, their guarded world, and I promised myself I wouldn't take it lightly. In the morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds in soft golden stripes. The scent of coffee drifted from the kitchen, and when I sat up, Marissa was standing by the counter wearing an oversized sweater, looking like someone caught halfway between hope and hesitation. She told me I could stay one more night if I needed to, just until I figured things out. I blinked at her, overwhelmed by the offer, the kindness, the trust. She didn't owe me anything, but she still gave, and in giving, she helped me remember who I was before life knocked me down. Days turned into a week. I fixed her leaky sink. I helped her sort her mail, repair a broken drawer, replace a light bulb she was too afraid to climb up for. She made me meals, bought me socks, and left little notes on the fridge telling me not to give up. We talked late into the evenings, slowly revealing the pieces of ourselves we never shared with anyone else. Neither of us meant to become important to the other. But sometimes healing sneaks up quietly, choosing you before you choose it. One night, after a long shift at her new bakery job, she came home exhausted, her shoulders sagging. She saw me sweeping the kitchen floor and stopped in the doorway, eyes shimmering in a way that made my chest tighten. She said she wasn't used to being cared for, not even in small ways. I told her I wasn't used to being needed. Somehow we found ourselves standing inches apart, breathing the same air, hearts beating in a rhythm we didn't plan. She didn't step forward. I didn't pull back. Instead, we stood there in the quiet apartment that had become more than just shelter. It had become a place of rebuilding, of rediscovery. Life didn't magically fix itself. I still had to find work, still had to rebuild my finances, still had to face the uncertainty of my future. But I wasn't doing it alone anymore, and neither was she. Together we learned that broken doesn't mean unworthy, lost doesn't mean unlovable, and sometimes the people who cross your path in the rainiest moments are the ones God sends to help light the way. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep creating stories that heal and inspire. Before the ending, comment below, kindness can save a life. In time, I found a steady job again. We moved into a better apartment, together, carefully, slowly. She kept her puzzles on the table, and I kept my boots by the door. The storm still came sometimes, inside us and around us, but we faced them side by side, and every now and then, on nights when the rain hit the windows just like it did that night, she would whisper the words that started it all, not out of fear now, but with a smile. She'd ask if I could drive her home, even though we were already there, and I'd answer the same way I did back then, but with a softer voice, a steadier heart, and a deeper truth. I'd tell her I already knew where I belonged, because home wasn't a place anymore. It was her.